How's everybody?
Pretty good.
Okay. Well, just so you know, you're in the right place on Beau Billingslea. And it's a Q&A, so I will answer whatever questions you have, if I have a legal answer for you. We normally have a monitor, so I'm monitoring my own panel, so I'm riffing, but not until someone comes up to the mic. You say, what can I tell you about myself? I'm human, or semi-human, you know. I was born in Charleston, South Carolina. I grew up in Connecticut. For a short period of time, we lived in Camden, New Jersey, across the river from Philly. I started my adult life out as an attorney. Yes, a question.
Okay, so I've heard some of your voice roles before, but I've never seen. I don't think I've ever seen you in movies. Which of your movies would you recommend watching first? For anyone who's never seen you in a movie.
Leprechaun in the Hood. Did anybody see that? Back to the Hood. I don't know if you were there. Oh, Welcome Dinosaur.
What was that?
I just said Welcome Dinosaur.
Oh, okay. I thought it was a movie title.
Oh, right. It's the Halloween H2O. American President with Michael Douglas.
What was that?
American President. Let's see, my favorite Martian. Gale Force. The Blob. Anybody see the remake of The Blob? We did that in '88. The original was, I think, in the 50s. It was in black and white. Then we did, Kevin Dillon was the star, Shawnee Smith in our remake. I'm not usually called upon to go through my resume. So you stumped me, man. You stumped me. Let's see. That's a lot of films you probably have never seen. Cowboy Bebop, the movie. Yeah, those are the main ones that I'm trying to revisit my life. I did a film in 80 or 81 called Night Shift. I don't know if anybody ever saw that. Were you guys familiar with Night Shift? It was Michael Keaton's first movie with Henry Winkler.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah. They were working out in the morgue.
Yeah, pimping in the morgue.
Yeah. I was a cop, a part of a two-man detective team. We were undercover, and actually the guy who played my partner was Henry Winkler's roommate when he was at Yale Drama School. We had this little subplot there that we were undercover at a nightclub and for narcotics, and nothing seemed to be happening, so we were about to leave, and then Michael Keaton comes up to us and he says, I'll never forget this line, he said, "You gentlemen seem to be unencumbered by female companionship. How would you like to be cumbered?" And we looked at each other and said, oh, okay. So he took us to the morgue, because that's where they worked out of the morgue. And Kevin Costner was an extra in that. But yeah, it was fun. We had a gunfight, and they were actually shooting actual projectiles behind us. They were shooting like ball bearings because we were in the morgue, and there was a lot of glass vials, so they wanted the glass vials to break. So they were shooting actual projectiles behind us, which was a bit unnerving. And, you know, the sharpshooter who was doing it, you know, we were saying, I don't know about this. And Michael asked Ronnie Howard. Ronnie Howard would direct it. And so we're not sure about this. So Ronnie went up to the sharpshooter and said, "Would you explain how this is going to work?" And he was this grizzled guy who had no patience for us. That we weren't supposed to be concerned about somebody shooting projectiles, you know, behind our heads, you know, going that way. But, let me see. A film with called Real Genius. Did you see that one? Yeah, that was fun. The house was filled with popcorn. Yeah, it's horror movies. Elimination of the World. NekoCon with Warwick. It's funny. We were on break. And we were just sitting around, and Warwick and I were talking, and then I decided to gift him with my Irish accent. So I asked him, "So Warwick, do you mind if I talk in an Irish accent?" And his eyes went up like that. I said, "No, Beau, you can do an Irish accent if you want." So there we were. I was the Black Irishman. Actually, I did that. My wife and I were on vacation in Avignon in France, and we were at a restaurant. We were at a restaurant, and there was some Irish tourists, and I heard them talking. So I went up to the table and started talking to them like that with an Irish accent. And once again, their eyes went big. I said, "You know, I'm the Black Irish. I'm from County Cork." And we ended up having a conversation for about 15 to 20 minutes. It was a lot of fun. They took it in the right spirit. As I can imagine, some people being a bit irritated, thinking that somehow you're making fun of them using their accent. But anyway, yeah. About my life, I have two wonderful wife, two wonderful children, 3 grandchildren. My oldest is working on a show called Bob Hart's Abishola. I don't know if anybody's aware of that on CBS. And they all live in the Los Angeles area, which is a joy to parents and grandparents when your family's in the same town, basically. Because my children, you know, growing up in Los Angeles, I'm from Connecticut, so they would go spend the summers with my mom and dad. And my son would ask me, you know, getting in the spring, and say, "Daddy, is it almost summer yet?" This guy said, "Yeah, it's getting close." I said, "Why?" Because I knew why. "I want to go see Granny and Papa. You know, go back to the farm, the garden, and just all of that stuff, because LA is kind of like what was that song? LA is a great big freeway, put 100 down and buy a car." And that's what you do, because you know, public transportation is not a big deal in LA. You know, basically buses. We have a subway, but I'm kind of loath to get in a subway in a place where you have earthquakes. I don't know, there's something about me. I don't want to get stuck underground in an earthquake. But my son's an attorney. He's followed in my footsteps, my original footsteps. My daughter is a CPA. She's the comptroller of the corporation. So my granddaughter, my oldest granddaughter, is the only one in show business besides me. I didn't encourage my kids to get into show business. I figured if it was in their blood, they'd find it, you know. And lo and behold, they went to regular jobs where they got regular paychecks. And so that was a real joy for us that we didn't have to supplement our kids. Because I have a lot of friends that they had 35, 40-year-old children living in the guest house and want to be musicians or whatever, because show business is a rough business. Even someone who's had a certain amount of success, such as myself, there's lots of rejection, lots of jobs. And you know, in our business, if you apply for a job, you don't get a polite rejection. You just hear nothing. I remember I was playing golf with a guy, tennis with a guy. We play about once a week, and I had auditioned for a commercial, and we were playing, and I think it was a fast turnaround. I auditioned one week and they shot the next week, and I thought I was still in the running, and I told my friend, I said, you know, I auditioned this Greyhound commercial. He said, we shot it. I said, wait, what? You shot that? He said, yeah, we shot it. Oh, okay. Well, welcome to show business. You just don't hear if you don't get it, and you're wondering. There's a certain glamour to show business, but there's also that side of it. And like in the voice world, we'll get replaced and not be told about it. That happened with Final Fantasy, the remake. We were told about it, but they replaced the whole cast. You know, who does that? In Japan, they're very loyal to the voice actors. And but here, the same thing happened with Dynasty Warriors. I voiced Dian Wei and Cao Ren, which was changed to Sao Ren, for, I don't know, 7 or 8 iterations of Dynasty Warriors. And I got an email, I don't know, like a Wednesday, Thursday of a week, asking me for my availability for the next project for next week. And I told them, you know, I'm available Tuesday and Wednesday. And I never heard anything until I found out on social media that they were replacing the whole cast in Dynasty Warriors. So there's that underbelly of our business where, I mean, it happens, you know, it happens to everybody at some point, I guess. But I just say that to let you know that it isn't as glamorous as it appears. Nothing is on the outside looking in. Any questions?
What made you switch from Warrior to back?
You know, that's a good question. When I told my father I was going to switch professions, because all my classmates, my peers, they said, "What are you, stupid? Come on!" And I told my father, and he said, "Well, you go for it." He said, "I spent the majority of my adult life getting up, going to work for jobs that I hated." And he said, "I don't want that for you. So you have your law degree, you can always go back to that. So you go for it." And of course, once I got his okay, everything else was noise. You know, everybody's noise. And as a matter of fact, one of my father's brothers called me from Georgia when I was in Hollywood. He said, my Uncle Will, and I guess we all families have that guy. He's like all the cousins' favorite uncle. Yeah. He was just such a cool guy. And so he called me and said, what you doing in Hollywood? You don't know nobody in Hollywood. Get your butt back home and get a job. So I said, well, Uncle Will, I'm going to give it a shot. And then when he started seeing me on TV, he called me back. He said, not bad. Not bad. I said, well, thanks for the support, Uncle Will. I appreciate it. But yeah, my first performance was I did the ham bone in I think it was like the fifth grade talent show. You guys know what the ham bone is? I'll give you that. The ham bone is, you know, you can do it sitting down, but it's like, yeah. You know, and there's a song, ham bone, have you heard? And you do, ham bone, have you heard? Papa's gonna buy me a mockingbird. If that mockingbird don't sing, Papa's gonna buy me a diamond ring. Okay, that's enough of that. So I did that, and you know, you go between the legs and all of that stuff. But, so I did that in the 5th grade talent show, and then I sang Silent Night in the Christmas, I think it was 6th grade, in the Christmas play, but I was off stage, you know, so I never made it on stage. So my voice was identified, and so I remember my 6th grade teacher was Miss Sullivan. She was sending me around to the other classrooms singing Loch Lomond. You guys know Loch Lomond? I can remember it. By yon bonny banks and by yon bonny breeze. Well, anyway, so she sent me around to the other classrooms singing, and so that put a little hint in the back of my mind, I guess, that I had a voice that people might want to listen to. But growing up, I thought of myself primarily as an athlete. I went to college on a football scholarship. It was funny. I was offered a contract to play professional baseball at the end of my senior year in high school for the Kansas City Athletics, who became the Oakland A's, right? The Oakland Athletics. And I remember that was in 1962, and they offered me $18,000 to sign. And I was jumping for joy, you know. I was thinking, oh man, that's a lot of money. So my father, the brilliant man that he was, he said, okay, that's great. Let's talk about this. Okay. And so he put forth this scenario that, okay, let's say you sign, and then you're playing in Texas on these baseball fields that don't even have grass, you know, and you're in the C leagues, and it doesn't work out. And what have you got? And I said, well, I guess I wouldn't have anything. Now, on the other hand, if you go to college on a football scholarship, and play football, and maybe you can play baseball there in college, and you get your education, and then maybe you can sign a contract after that. And I'm thinking, and he said, but it's your decision. It's your decision. You decide what you want. And because that's the kind of father he was. He would talk me into the right decision. He wouldn't dictate or dominate me. He just talked me into the right decision. So that's what I did. And as fate would have it, I was captain of my college football team, and I had letters from the NFL to play professional ball. But I had to go in the military because of Vietnam. So I was in ROTC. So that dream kind of disappeared. But then it kind of raised its head again later on. But when I was in law school, I played semi-pro ball for a little team that they played. It was in a league that was in New England. I grew up in Connecticut. It was in New England. So the owners of the team asked me if I would, it was called the Maryland Shamrocks, asked me if I would join the team because I, as a local athlete from the past, I would put people in the seats in the stands. And so I did that, and lo and behold, the scout from the Houston Oilers, which became the Tennessee team, had a special tryout for me, and they wrote it up in the paper, and they had the news media there, and the local guys, and they filmed the tryout and all of that. And then he asked me, it was funny, in the locker room after the tryout, I was the quarterback, so he had me passing the ball. And he asked me, he told me, he said, you could have gone pro out of college, but you weren't interested, but now you're interested. So I said, yeah. But I had to go in the military, and I wasn't really available, so I was thinking, maybe I could squeeze in a year in the NFL before I went into the Army. Silly me, I'm thinking I can do it. I contacted my congressman, and I tried to get out of my commitment so I could play pro football, and he said, no, you're committed, They spent money training you in ROTC, so you have to fulfill your obligation. It made sense. And so, but anyway, this scout didn't know anything about that at the time. So he said, well, I want to fly down to Houston, and the big boys want to take a look at you. And so I said, okay, but then he found out, and which was good, and there's no sense in me going through that exercise if I wasn't really going to be available to play pro ball. And so that dream died. So anyway, when I was backing up when I was in college, as I said, I was captain of the football team, and one of my fraternity brothers was directing a play called Emperor Jones by Eugene O'Neill. And it's about an emperor in the Caribbean islands who loses his mind, Emperor Jones. And he's being chased by his ghosts, and he has a gun with silver bullets that will kill ghosts. And obviously he's losing his mind. He's bonkers. But he had a lot of monologues, and he was on stage alone and stuff. So this guy, he was saying that he thought if the captain of the football team did a play, it would help bring the campus together, because the campus was really divided at that time because of Vietnam. People were picketing and picketing our ROTC drills, and practically all the football players were in ROTC, and we had buzz cuts, and the theater majors had the long flowing hair, and so they called us names, we called them names, and it was a good thing. And so he was thinking that that would help bring the campus together. And the fact that I had these monologues and I was on stage all alone, I kind of like that. I kind of like that. So I did it, and it actually had that effect of bringing the campus together, because the two sides would come and talk with each other at intermission of the play, and it was an entertaining play. Because when I first told a couple of my teammates I was going to do the play, they said, "Oh, Beau's going to do it back." Don't go there. But anyway, so that was my first taste of actual real show business. So I was doing the play, and there was a live audience out there, and exchanging energy. And to this day, that's my favorite element of show business is stage plays. Because there was a live audience, like you guys, who were exchanging energy, and you're relating to me, in real time. Because TV, and except for sitcoms, you have an audience. You don't necessarily have that interaction. You're doing one-camera shows, like usually the hour-long shows on TV and movies. The only audience you have is the crew, and they don't care. They just want to do their job and go home, But anyway, during my third year of law school, I decided I wanted to look into the show business thing a little bit. And our next door neighbor had her cousin was a director, and he was directing commercials, and he had worked with this producer called Mike Todd, who did, I think it's the original Around the World in 80 Days. He was married to Elizabeth Taylor. Names probably you don't know, but anyway, so I wrote him and said, I want to get involved in show business. And he wrote back. He said, yeah, it's a good time, come on down. And so we set it up. I went down to New York, and he was shooting a Van Heusen shirt commercial that day. And so I was, the first time on a film set, and I was just like, wow, I love this. This is just, this is so cool. And he told me what to do. I had to get an answering service. I had to get photographs. I had to join the unions, and basically SAG, Screen Actors Guild. And I went through after the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, and now they're merged. I don't know if you're correct. It's one union. And so he mentored me, and got me going, and I took his advice, and I had immediate success. I did some training films for the Army, oddly enough. It had nothing to do with me being in the Army. And I did my first voice gig as the voice of a coach in a puppet movie. So, and little did I know that I would start off my career that way, and I would kind of end my career that way, because I don't do too much on camera now. Although I did a Dunkin' Donuts, but they don't say Dunkin'. They don't say donuts anymore. Donuts is a bad word now. So I did a Dunkin' commercial. It just started airing. sure people saw it on during the NFL football games on Sunday, where this guy is buying coffee and bringing to people to make amends to his child's daycare. Because his child was a terror, so he was making up by giving coffee to the daycare people and to his wife. And I'm his boss at work, and he's giving coffee to everybody. So I have this one line: "You're going places, Jim." You know, giving you good coffee. You know, commercials are so much nonsense, but they're a lot of fun too. Anyway. I was very lucky to have people help me and to mentor me. When I went to Hollywood, one of my mentors was Leo Penn, Sean Penn's dad, and he was the director, and he's such a cool guy. You never know that he was a heavyweight in Hollywood. He walked around in Bermuda shorts and his baseball hat on crooked. And I remember I was walking down the halls in the building at Paramount Studios, and I hear there was an office there, and I walk by and I hear, "Hey kid!" And it was Leo. So, "What are you doing Thursday?" I said, "No, nothing. I mean, I got a gig for it." So that was the type of guy he was. So I was lucky throughout my life to have people who were willing to give me a helping hand. To boost me along. When I was in the service in Germany, I was able to do some plays. I did the lead in Dracula, so I played Dracula. And but I was still, I had never studied or anything, so the guy said, acting, how hard can it be? And but I found out there was one monologue that Dracula had before he disappeared up the chimney, and I got kind of like stuck in a loop, and I did the monologue twice. It was so funny looking, because I was on adrenaline, and I was going, and it was like automatic, and the words are just coming out, and I just started the monologue twice, and my other players on the stage with me, you could see the panic in their eyes. What is going on? Is he having a nervous breakdown? What's going on with this guy? And I did Dracula, I did Street Scene, which is a musical. I had a song which was kind of funny. One of the lyrics was, "When a woman has a baby, assuming that she can, she shouldn't overlook the fact that it's awful hard on a man." I'm sure the ladies will really enjoy that. So I did Street Scene, Dracula, Bad Seed. I don't know if you guys know, Bad Seed was a movie done in the 40s about this little girl who's like 11 years old and she was killing people. It's a light comedy. And my character, she set on fire. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. Let's see what. Yeah, I got to tell you about it. We traveled a little bit with Dracula. I was stationed in Frankfurt, so we did the theater there, special services. But we went out near the East German border in Fulda, and we did it in a tent. And they handed out peanuts to the audience so that they could throw peanuts at Dracula when he came on stage. and it was so camp. It was great because I had my cape, and then they would throw the peanuts, and I had my fangs. To the audience. I think every actor should have the opportunity to do a show like that. It was just incredible fun. So anyway, doing those plays in Germany, that kind of solidified in my mind that that's what I wanted to do with my life. And so when I came back, my last duty station was in San Francisco at Presidio. I'll have to say this, I was on orders to go to Vietnam, and when you get your orders, it says, APO San Francisco, that meant you're going to Nam. And I was supposed to be an advisor out in the village. And so I talked to my dad, Martin Luther King was saying that those people didn't do anything to us. We don't have freedom in Georgia and South Carolina, Mississippi, Alabama. Here, why are we going to go fight over there when we? And so I took that to heart. So I told my dad, I said, I'm not going to go to Vietnam. I'm leaving that war. I'm going to refuse to go. And what do you think? And he said, well, you're ready to pay the consequences. Do what you need to do. And so I was prepared to go to the stockade because, failure to obey a lawful order in the military meant you went to the stockade and you get court-martialed. And so I told my superiors, I was stationed at Fort Lee at the time, and I just finished my basic and advanced training. And I told them, I said, I'm not going to go to Vietnam. And they said, okay, we have a program. They called it was a secret program. They called it voluntary indefinite. They said, if you give us an extra year, we'll send you to Germany. And I was thinking, well, that's easy. I was ready to go to prison. Let's see, prison, Germany, prison. I'll take Germany. And so that's the way that went. And I remember I called my wife, and I met some really good friends. Tony Rosado, and we're still friends now because of social media, and another buddy from Puerto Rico. They were doing the National Guard's summer duty, and we buddied up. So his name is Pedro Santiago, and he invited me down to Puerto Rico, my wife and I, and he said, all you have to do is just get yourself down there, and you'll be my guest. And I said, oh, that's cool. But I didn't realize how serious he was. When we went there, I have to tell you, I called my wife, because she didn't know anything about any of this. So I said, okay, you have choices. We can go to Puerto Rico, or we can go to Germany, or we can go to Puerto Rico and go to Germany. And she said, what are you talking about? I said, well, okay, so I told her that's the deal. So we went down there, and he was a professor at the University of Ponce, which is on the southern coast of the island. San Juan is on the northern coast. And he was, as it turned out, he was very wealthy. His father owned, all this stuff. And he and his brother both had a home that his father gave them that they were waiting for when they got married. They had houses. So he activated his house for us. And he gave me his car. He had a Trans Am, was black and rust colored, which matched the colors of his boat. And he was a member of a yacht club and stuff. I say, wow, I know how to pick my friends. this is pretty cool. And so yeah, we spent a week down there, and then we went to. I came back to Vietnam a little bit, and then I went to Germany. My family didn't come with me at that time. A little bit later. And so anyway, that's pretty much the precursor to, or the prequel to my show business life. When I was in San Francisco, I was just there for a year, and I was preparing. I had made the decision I was going to go to Hollywood and get that call from my Uncle Will and tell you don't know nobody in Hollywood. Go home and get yourself a job. There was a show being filmed in San Francisco called The Streets of San Francisco, and Michael Douglas was the star of that TV series, and the public television station had an auction where we bid to spend a day on the set. And so that was in 1975. So I bid and I got it. $1,600 to spend. And $1,600 in '75 was a couple bucks. A couple bucks. But I was committed, and I wanted to spend the day on the set and meet Michael and all of that. And I did. He gave me tips. He gave me the name of his acting coach, Jim Corey, and Hollywood, and then 20 years later, in '95, I did American President with Michael. And as it turned out, we had a common friend from high school. He went to Choate, which is, I don't know if you're familiar with Choate. It's in Wallingford, Connecticut, and the next city over from where I grew up. and it's a Ivy League prep school, so usually, you know, whoever goes in, a lot of the Kennedys went to Choate, so if you go to Choate, then you end up going to Ivy League school. So one of my best friends from growing up went there, and so I knew that Michael had gone to Choate, so I asked him, I said, did you know a guy by the name of Bruce Malloy? And he said, Bruce Malloy? He said, yeah. He said, he's the reason I knew I shouldn't be playing football. And he told me about this play that I don't know what, you know, he was a sophomore or something, this play that Bruce was running the ball, he tried to tackle him, and Bruce put his helmet in his chest and ran over him. And he said, I quit that night, that day after practice, I quit football. And I realized I should not, you know, I shouldn't be playing football. But it was a nice experience. And he asked me if he had any photos. I said, yeah, I had some photos of Bruce and myself as kids playing Little League ball. And so he wanted me to bring it in. And so that really augmented my experience doing American President with Ian and Annette and Michael J. Fox and Marty Sheen. That was a very wonderful experience. But I don't know, I'm rambling because I don't have anybody to ask me any questions. Yes.
Who was the most fun or memorable or favorite person that you've worked with over the years?
I've been lucky to work with a lot of good people. I worked with a guy named Charlton Heston. You probably don't know who he was. Okay, well, I did a play with him in LA, and he was very enjoyable, and he took to me for some reason. And so, like, he confided in me, and he'd say, oh, let's talk. And he would tell me about, because he was, within the show business community, people kind of made fun of his acting chops, his acting ability. But, you know, I thought he was fine, but that was just what it was. And he was sensitive to that. So he told me about, he says, I know people don't. He said, but I didn't have an opportunity, I never had an opportunity to do small roles. Because he was a big man, he had a large head and a big deep voice. He said, I could never be a pizza delivery guy. You know, it's just, I couldn't be that guy. And so it took me a while. He said that I didn't really have an opportunity to develop my skills. And I remember that was the year of the Olympics in LA in '84. And I booked a Kodak commercial while I was doing the play. And I almost didn't ask to get off, but then finally I did. I said, you know, I put this commercial with the stage manager. I put this commercial. Will you be, you know, think I can do it? And they said, oh yeah, sure. You have an understudy. You can do it. And so that was on a Thursday. I remember we shot, and then we had a matinee that Thursday and an evening performance as well. So I missed the matinee, and I came to the evening performance, and he said to me, well, Beau, I understand you were making some money today. I said, yeah, because I felt a little guilty. I shouldn't have, but I mean, you know, we walk the beat of our own drum. You know, you have a job, you commit to the job, but you know, when you do a play, you have an understudy. That's what understudies are for. If you get sick and not able to do the gig, So. And I remember we went to Denver with the show, and downtown Denver, they had no parking around the Civic Center there, and they changed the ordinance for this guy. And so there was this red Corvette right by the stage door, the only car parked on either side of the road. And that's when I realized that this guy's a legend. And doctors and lawyers were coming backstage to get his autograph. And we did a benefit with Ray Charles. You guys have heard of Ray Charles, the singer?
Yes, sir.
And Ray was an hour late. You know, but what Chuck did, that was the other thing. The first day of rehearsal, Chuck went around to people and say, well, because he was at the auditions, at the callbacks, and he complimented me on my audition. I was this year, as he did everybody. He said, my friends call me Chuck. And that was, I remember he rented, they had them bring a large screen TV, to backstage so we could watch the, we were just in rehearsal at that time, so we could watch the Super Bowl. And his, my interactions with him were completely different from what I had understood him to be as a human being. Of course, he was president of the National Rifle Association, and so he was getting death threats and things, so they put in a metal detector tower at the stage door. That was the only time in my career, the first time and the only time in my career where we had metal detectors for the actors when he came in. But he was very memorable. Marty Sheen, Michael J. Fox. American President was such a fun show to shoot. And Michael Keaton, when we did Night Shift, he was still doing his stand-up, and he was so light and easy and so fun. He was just hilarious, and he always had us cracking up and makeup. And I hadn't seen him for a long time. And when he did Beetlejuice, and then he did Batman, and it was like, who is that guy? He was so dark and menacing, and but yeah, it was really fun working with Michael. I'm trying to think. My experiences were really extraordinary over the years. To be mentored by like Leo Penn, and to be befriended by influential people who could help me and give me advice. It's not a total answer to the question, but one of my most moving experiences was a miniseries in the 80s that I did called North and South. It was actually North and South for 2. It was a Civil War epic, and it was about these two guys who, Patrick Swayze was one of them, who met at West Point, and one was from the South, one was from the North. But anyway, I portrayed an enslaved person, and that was a monumental experience for me, to portray an enslaved person. I mean, I meditated, I did everything I could to get into the bones of a person who was owned by somebody else. And but the irony of that whole situation was, we started off shooting in Charleston, or outside of Charleston, Blue Hall, which was a plantation. And my parents came down. That was the first time they ever came on the set when I was working. But they came down to the city of my birth, and we went to my grandparents' graves, and it was just a wonderful experience from the standpoint of having a great gig and getting paid good money. I mean, Warner Brothers was just paying money. Like Liz Taylor did one scene, she got 250 grand for it. But that was, I mean, if you can imagine being an enslaved person, take a moment. Because there were my ancestors, I have ancestors who were born into slavery and died in slavery. They never had freedom. And the women, were abused. Families were broken up. Children were sold off. And you think of the hopelessness going to bed at night. That was one of the things that I did, to try to think of what would be going through my mind when I went to bed at night. What would be going through my mind when I awakened in the morning. Working 6 days a week, dawn to dusk, for room and board, basically. And we filmed in actual slave quarters, and that was extraordinary. I was preaching. It was a funeral, and they had a wooden box and the body of the box, and I was preaching. And Jean Francis, she almost passed out. She said, I can't take it. I can't take it. You can literally feel, I don't know, agony or depression. And the floor was a dirt floor, and it was, it was kind of like worn down, and you could sense that people actually lived there. It was a hearth, and that was that was an extraordinary experience. And then, on the other side of that coin, I did a show on Nickelodeon called Just Jordan. It was, I think 2006, 2007 we shot it, and it was aired in 2007, 2008, 2 seasons. But I played a grandpa who ran a diner. I lived upstairs over the diner, and my newly divorced daughter came to live with me with her 2 children, my grandkids. And we had capers, and it was a sitcom, so it was just beautiful. But the fabulous thing about it was, my granddaughter was an extra on the show a lot. She was like, I think she would have been 9 or 10, around 9 or 10. And she was just, when she wasn't actually working, she was there on the set anyway. And the last show of the first season, the writers wrote a food fight. Because, I ran a diner. The writers wrote a food fight. And it was the most fun. I mean, working with your family is the best. But especially with your little grandbaby. But anyway, so we had a food fight, and one of the adults did not show up. So my daughter actually worked on the show, because she had to be on the set whenever my granddaughter was, because she was a minor, right? And so we were in the diner, and she's smushing cake in my face and pouring Kool-Aid on my head, and at one point she turns to my daughter, her mother, and said, "Mommy, this is so much fun." Grabs a hand of cake and smushes it in my face. And we still laugh about it and enjoy it. But that was a fabulous time in my career, because I was able to work with my granddaughter. As a matter of fact, she called me from school, and she asked me, she said, "Papa, are you famous?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know, maybe a little bit. Why do you ask?" She said, "Because my classmates were talking about you, and they didn't know you were my papa." And so they could hear the happiness in her voice, that she was. But to share a gig with your family, with your granddaughter, was just the best. So that was a lot of fun. Yeah.
When you act, is there a particular technique that you use, like method acting or anything like that?
Well, I try as much as I can, but it's tough to be a method actor all the way through. Like if you're playing a murderer, I wouldn't suggest murdering people. Just, Your Honor, I was preparing for a role. All actors, I think we try to find a bit of ourselves in our characters that we're portraying. And like the character that I played in North and South was, his name was Ezra. And I fashioned him after my grandfather's. My mother's father, he had been shot. And in the wrist, the word was he shot himself cleaning his shotgun. I don't know if that happened or not. But these 2 fingers were pinned down like that. So he just had the use of these 3 fingers. Like one of my cousins said, those are the strongest 3 fingers in the county. He latched onto you like that, and you could not move. Right? But anyway, so that was part of my character. And when my dad came down, my mom broke into tears when my dad told me. When she saw me, she said, "Oh no." That was her dad. That was, But you're trying to make it as real as possible, because you guys will see through fake stuff. Someone's just overlaying stuff. We don't think about doing voices. Even the voice, we're doing voices. We're portraying characters. Right? It's more than characters, more than just a voice. But I remember I did an episode of Murder, She Wrote. It was a baseball episode, and I had been playing baseball, and I was pretty good at it, and so that was just a joy, because it was a substantial part of me. It's considered myself an athlete, a baseball player, throwing over the top, and early on I got a series regular job on a show called Divorce Court. And they had originally done a divorce court, I think when it was still black and white TV, and they brought it back. And they wanted all of the lawyers to be real lawyers. And so I was a gift to them because I was a lawyer slash actor. And so that was a lot of fun. The first season, and then the second season they dumped all the lawyers because all the lawyers were boring. You know, because the law basically is boring. You know, if you watch a show on TV, that's one thing. But if you ever go to a courtroom, you know, generally speaking, it's like, where are the papers, exhibit 3, and, you know, this and that, and this and that. So, but I brought a little pizzazz to it. So that was a lot of fun. And it was also fun to do divorce court because periodically we do a black show where, you know, basically all the actors is a black couple divorcing everything. And because usually, especially in those days, as an actor of color, there would be one hire. You know, there would be, everybody would be Caucasian, they'd hire one black actor every show. And so we never worked with each other, which is kind of weird, kind of odd. So that was a beautiful thing about divorce court. I worked with my fellow actors, you know, and I'm still friends now with some guys that I met on that show. Yeah, everybody, all actors have their own process, you know, how they approach it. But with me, as I say, I portrayed Martin Luther King in I portrayed Martin Luther King in a stage play, and I meditated on him, and I delivered the I Have a Dream speech in that play. And oddly enough, I was cast as Martin Luther King in a movie of the week. I had already done the work, you know, meditation, becoming Martin Luther King. I have a dream. And so I delivered that speech. Everybody at the table, I think save for one guy, they were in tears, they were just weeping, right? And so the next day they called me, you know, I booked the job, and they wanted me to help cast. They were casting the Robert Kennedy role. And so anyway, I'm sitting behind the table helping them cast the role. And then, I think that we did 2 days of that, and then at the evening of the second day, my agent called me. He said, don't bother going back. I said, what? I booked this. He said, no, Robert Guillaume found out about this job, and so his people called, so he wants to do it. So, you know, welcome to our world, that celebrity trumps talent. You know, I mean, that's just something that we know that goes on. You know, it is what it is, and that happened to me on another occasion where I was booked on the job. We were talking scheduling and all of that, and all of a sudden, oh, never mind. Jesus, I can't. Give me an Harry Carey. What is this? And that's one of the things. One of the jokes we say in showbiz is you don't tell anybody that you did a gig until the check cashed. You know. I remember. You know, whenever I was going to be on TV, I let my parents know, and then they let everybody know at church, and they maybe, if it was large enough, they have a little article in the paper that Beau was going to be in the show. And but I remember I told my parents I was going to be in the show. They told everybody, and I was cut out of the show. What the heck? Because and my father said, you know, kid, next time you tell us you're going to be in a show, you better be in that show. Because I embarrassed my mom and dad, you know. I mean, one of the main motivators in my life was to make my mom and dad proud of me, you know. And I just, you know, heaped all of this embarrassment on them. Say, well, okay, but you know, that's what happens. You never know, especially early on in my career. I was doing small roles that could be easily cut out, and because very often, especially in TV shows, they have an intention to do this and do that, but then when it comes down to it, they say, well, we want to put the leads on camera as much as possible, so what can we'll cut this out, we'll cut that out. But I don't know how I got on that, but yeah, I guess I can take another question if somebody has it before we close it up.
Yeah, as far as voice acting for anime or anime movies and things like that, how do you even begin to even hear about it or apply for it, or how did you get a lot of those roles?
Good question. Early on, I was just asked to do it. I was asked to do the for Raikage and Naruto, Jet Black, Ogremon, and sometimes I still get it now. But now the business has changed a bit because our voice world used to be a little small world. Everybody kind of knew each other and the same people would be. But now it's grown and it's billowed, and so I have to audition. What's that about? Not me, yeah. So my agent, sends me auditions, and sometimes I'll get a direct request. So I'm going to be doing something next week that I got a direct request that I didn't audition for. So that doesn't happen as much now as it used to. But you have an agent, and the casting director contacts the agent and say, well, we had a special request for Beau, and like this. And unfortunately, it was really funny. Sometimes I get an audition, and then it's written out. It says the prototype is Beau Billingslea, or the prototype is the voice of Jet Black. And then I remember my agent saying once, well, I got the guy. And they said, well, that's a little right on, So, and then I don't think I've ever booked a gig where I was the template, My voice was the one that they want. They said, we want a voice like this guy. And I said, well, I got that voice. No. It's too right on, I never thought that I would, I'm in the twilight of my years. I never thought that I would be this age and enjoying spending time with you guys and absorbing all the love from you. When the convention culture started, it was like, wow, that's interesting. Because when I was doing soaps, I would get fan letters. I was doing General Hospital, Young and the Restless. I would get fan letters, primarily from people who were like in nursing homes. And one little thing that a lot of people don't realize that basketball players, at least they used to, I don't know now, used to watch the soaps a lot, because professional basketball players, because they work at night and they're in a hotel in the room, and during the day. And so what they, turn on the soaps, just turn on General Hospital. And I remember I was doing something, and I ran into Charles Barkley, and he was whining about something my character did. And I said, that's scripted, right? It's written down, I just have to say those words. I don't have to, But it's a real joy to be able to interface with you guys, face to face. When you come to my table one-on-one, it's a real blessing. And I love to hear the stories of how you started watching some of my stuff, Cowboy Bebop, and the impact on your lives. Because when we do these things, we don't project that at all. It's like it's a gig, it's fun, pays me a couple bucks, and I'm moving on to the next thing. And then cut to the future, and you're telling me how it helped you get through college. And we were in LA, the whole Cowboy Bebop gang we were in LA doing a panel, and it was this huge room, I don't know, I think 1,500 people or something, 2,000 people. And we had open mic like this, and this one woman came up, and she could barely speak, but she was explaining how Cowboy Bebop saved her life, that she was seriously contemplating taking her own life, and a friend introduced her to Cowboy Bebop, and she was, she could hardly speak, and she was weeping, and we all went down, we gave her we all circled around her, gave her a hug, we were all weeping. I think the whole room was weeping. For someone to have the courage and the need to express that in a microphone in front of, this room full of people. I mean, it was just such a poignant moment. And I've had a lot of experiences, not to that extreme, but a lot of experiences where people express to me how my work helped uplift them, to whatever degree. And it comes back to when I was in the booth, and I was doing a cartoon. I was just doing a cartoon and not having the thought or the understanding that it might uplift someone and or save someone's life. It's an extraordinary position to be in, and I just had a need to express that I'm so grateful to be blessed to be in the situation that I am, to experience you guys face to face and to hear your stories about how my work has affected your lives. Well, I guess that we're about out of time, huh? I'll be at my table if you want to come and chat.